Final block. February 18th, 2001. Daytona International Speedway, Florida. The final lap of the Daytona 500. Dale Earnhardt Sr., 49 years old. The Intimidator. A living legend with 7 championships, the very face of the sport. He was piloting the famous black number 3 Chevrolet Monte Carlo, running in 3rd place. He had taken on the role of the defender. He was blocking the field to protect the lead for his 2 team cars, his son Dale Earnhardt Jr. and teammate Michael Waltrip. Turn 4, just seconds from the finish line. A slight tap from behind caused the number 3 car to lose control, wobble, and veer toward the retaining wall. It slammed head-on into the concrete at a 55-degree angle. Impact speed, 160 mph. At that same moment, Ken Schrader's car crashed into the right side. The wreck didn't look catastrophic. The car didn't go airborne, didn't catch fire, didn't flip multiple times. It looked like a routine accident, but inside the cockpit, a devastating trauma was unfolding. In the split second of impact, the car decelerated violently. Earnhardt's left seat belt snapped. Crucially, he was still wearing an old-style open-faced helmet and refused to use a head and neck support device, finding it restrictive. This caused Earnhardt's head to whip forward and to the right. His chin struck the steering wheel, causing a basilar skull fracture. Blood flooded the ventricles of his brain. His body went limp. Death was instantaneous as the car slid down onto the infield grass. Michael Waltrip crossed the line first. Dale Jr. took second. Fireworks exploded overhead, and the team celebrated a historic victory in Victory Lane, completely unaware that their godfather lay dead in the wreckage. Ken Schrader was the first to run to the number 3 car, and the look of horror in his eyes as he peered inside signaled to the world. The era of the Intimidator had ended. Dale Earnhardt's death changed the face of the sport forever. Immediately following that Black Sunday, NASCAR mandated the use of the HANDS device, developed force-absorbing safer barriers, and redesigned the chassis. Today, thanks to these tragic events, racing is safer than ever before. The Turn 6 impact. January 19th, 1964. Riverside International Raceway, California. Joe Weatherly, 41 years old, the clown prince of racing the back-to-back NASCAR Cup Series champion. He sat behind the wheel of the Budmore No. 8 Mercury, competing in the Motor Trend 500. At the time, Weatherly carried a haunting obsession, the fear of being trapped inside a burning car. Because of this, he wore only a lap belt and vehemently refused to use a shoulder harness. The driver's side window was completely open, void of any protective netting. Lap 86, turn 6. The Mercury's braking system faltered. The race car lost control, sliding broadside toward the concrete retaining wall. When the car slammed its left side into the wall, massive inertia threw Weatherly's body toward the point of impact. With no shoulder harness to restrain his upper body and no window net to contain him, his torso was flung out the open window. Joe Weatherly's head was ejected, becoming the direct point of contact between the nearly 2-ton vehicle and the unforgiving concrete wall. The impact happened in a split second. The champion's skull was instantly crushed. His body lay motionless in the mangled cockpit, eyes staring blankly beneath a helmet that had been twisted backward. The car slid to a stop with the bodywork mostly intact, the engine still running, but the driver inside was already gone. He had refused the shoulder harness to ensure an easy escape from fire, yet that very lack of restraint allowed his head to be thrown outside the confines of the car. It was a tragic paradox. He died trying to avoid a different kind of death. Immediately following the tragedy, NASCAR began research, and by 1971, the window net became mandatory. That cross-woven nylon mesh was born to ensure that no matter how a car flips or impacts, the driver remains safely contained within the cockpit. The Charlotte Inferno, May 24th, 1964. Charlotte Motor Speedway, North Carolina. Glenn Roberts, legendary, known as Fireball Roberts. NASCAR's first true superstar, the icon of speed. He entered the World 600 in the number 22 Ford, his engine roaring on the oval where he had dominated with explosive bursts of acceleration. Lap 7. A collision occurred ahead between Ned Jarrett and Junior Johnson. Possessing the instincts of a veteran, Roberts swerved violently to avoid the wreck. The Ford lost control, spun out, and slammed rear first into the concrete retaining wall at 140 mph. The gas tank ruptured, spewing fuel. Simultaneously, sparks from the friction hit the tarmac. And then, boom! True to his name, a massive fireball swallowed the cabin. Roberts had refused to treat his driving suit with fire-retardant chemicals due to his chronic asthma, wearing only untreated fabric to breathe easier. This decision caused his flesh to vaporize. Third-degree burns instantly covered 80% of his body. He held his breath to avoid inhaling the toxic smoke, but his scalp and limbs melted the white tissue of exposed muscle, visible amidst the twisting metal and the acrid stench of burning flesh. Roberts was trapped in that incinerator for tens of seconds. He screamed in desperation from the ashes, "Ned, help me." When Ned Jarrett rushed into the inferno to pull Roberts out, the skin on Fireball's body sloughed off in sheets. The cruel irony was that Glenn Roberts actually suffered from pyrophobia, a fear of fire. He had spent his entire life racing against that fear, only to be ultimately consumed by it. He survived the initial shock, battling agonizing pain with burns covering 80% of his body. He languished in the hospital for 39 days, fighting a war against the pain deep in his marrow. On July 2nd, pneumonia and sepsis overwhelmed his system, tearing through his lungs and leading to his death. Roberts' death forced NASCAR to mandate fire-retardant suits and the use of the rubberized fuel cell to prevent spills. Glenn Roberts was burned alive so that future generations would never have to suffer the same fate. The Turn 3 death. May 12, 2000. Adam Petty, 19 years old, the prince of NASCAR royalty, the one destined to become the first fourth-generation professional athlete in American sports history. He was behind the wheel of the number 45 Chevrolet Monte Carlo, running a free practice session for the Busch 200 at New Hampshire International Speedway. All technical readings were nominal. The V8 engine roared at the red line. Adam was pushing the car to its absolute limit, hurtling toward Turn 3 at over 130 mph. This was the lift and brake point. But the 400-pound machine betrayed its master. The throttle stuck wide open, locked at maximum velocity. The engine continued to drive the car forward, unabated, turning the curve into a deadly straight line. The car slammed into the outside concrete retaining wall at a fatal angle. It was a near head-on impact on the right side. Massive G-forces instantly sheared the steel chassis and pulverized the front end. Inside the cockpit, Adam's body was violently thrashed. His head snapped forward, his neck shattered. The whiplash caused a basilar skull fracture. Death was instantaneous upon impact. Adam's father, Kyle Petty, stood in the garage area watching the entire Petty family dream evaporate in a cloud of white concrete dust. Adam Petty was dead before his legacy could even begin. Even more horrifying, just 8 weeks later, driver Kenny Irwin Jr. perished at that exact turn, hitting that exact wall, sustaining the exact same skull injury. Adam's death forced the implementation of a steering wheel-mounted emergency kill switch and served as the bloody precursor to the mandatory use of the Hans device. A new era of safety was built upon the blood and bones of a 19-year-old boy. The Valentine's tragedy, February 14, 1994. Daytona International Speedway, Florida. Rodney Orr, 31 years old, the reigning Goodies Dash Series champion, carrying the ambitions of a rookie in the sport's most prestigious arena, the Winston Cup. He sat strapped inside the number 37 Ford Thunderbird. It was Valentine's Day. While the world exchanged roses, Orr yearned to turn a qualifying ticket for the Daytona 500 into the ultimate gift for his wife. Orr rolled out onto the track that morning. The air at Daytona was still thick with the pall of death. Just 3 days prior, legend Neil Bonnet had perished in Turn 4. A heavy tension blanketed every mechanic and driver. Rodney Orr entered Turn 2. Speeds touched 175 mph. At the apex of the corner, a mechanical component no larger than a finger sealed his fate. Suddenly, the mounting stud of the right rear shock absorber snapped in two. The spring unleashed, puncturing the deck lid and destroying the car's aerodynamics. The Ford lost all control, the rear end stepping out despite Orr's counter steer. The car spun, sliding down onto the flat apron. The high speed caused the car to lift off, flipping inverted and flying straight into the steel catch fence pole 10 feet in the air. G-forces exceeded 70, ripping the roll cage apart and crushing the roof down onto the driver's seat. The impact happened in a split second. Orr's head was shattered, his chest impaled by metal debris. His upper body was decimated by the impact of 3 500-pound lumels of twisting metal. As the car fell back and slid to a halt on the grass, Rodney Orr was already dead. Cause of death: massive trauma and a basilar skull fracture. The irony was heartbreaking. Rodney Orr died just a few hundred yards from where Neil Bonnet had died 3 days earlier. He passed away on Valentine's Day, newly engaged. And because Bonnet's death cast such a long shadow, Orr's tragedy was nearly buried by the media, becoming a faded ghost in the bloodiest week in Daytona history. 2 deaths in 3 days forced NASCAR to reevaluate aerodynamics. However, it would take years before roof flaps were truly perfected to keep cars on the ground. Please like and subscribe so I can bring you more stories like this.